In our previous video, this is where we actually stopped. What we did was to bring in our data, have it transformed, and actually create our data modeling, the star schema, and the snowflakes right here. In case you want to look at how we got it done, it's very simple. Please take a look at the video. You're going to learn a lot. So going back here right now, this is the data view where you can see our, our columns for every single tables that we actually have right in here. Okay, the next thing now is this. If I take you back to this particular report view, you can now see that we have fewer columns here. What happened? When we come over here, we have lots of columns on our transactional table or the fact sales table right here. So, but only few columns will show up when we actually get to the report view. That was because in the first video, I did hide those columns I am not going to actually use for any reason. So it's very simple. When you actually hover over it, you can click over here and then you click on hide, or you can actually unhide. That is how I did it. Okay, coming back here right now, if I click on this particular table, it's going to show me every, table that we have something pulling into this particular table. So now we have this particular couple of measures right here. The very first thing I'm going to do now is that I want us to actually create a table that will store all our measures for us. Already we have measures inside this particular table. We have to move them off. Let us quickly go over to home. Once you're on home, click on enter data. So you have this as a table. So I want to change it to DAX table. So here you go, you have the DAX table right here. And if I go to my modeling view here, I'm going to find the DAX table here. And this is what we call disconnected table. It has no connection to any other tables that we have right here. It's just a standalone table. All it's going to do is to actually help us to save or house our measures. The thing is this, how do we actually move those particular measures from here into this particular table? There are two options you can actually use to do that. You can do it individually, or you can actually do it once without having to move it one after the other. Okay, now if I click over this particular quantity for audio here, I can actually see that I have this particular one selected, which is measure tools. So if you're on home, you might not see what we want right now. So make sure you click on this particular one right here and switch to measure tools, just like what I've done. So if this one is highlighted, you are going to see that you have name, and that name will reflect this particular name right here, and to tell you the home table that the measure is sitting currently. So to switch this particular measure from here, click over here and choose the table you want to move the measure into. So let's just look at this particular DAX table right here. As you can see, it has been moved here. So the simplest way is that, let's say you have over 20 to 30 measures and you want to move them all at once without doing them one after the other. Go over to this particular model view here and make sure you bring up the data. Then the property should be turned on as well. Okay, I think this one for now is optional. So over here, this is what we have as our DAX table, and we have to locate our measure right here. So here is one of the measures we want to move. You're going to hold your control key to actually select this one as part of it. As you can see, both of them are selected. The next thing you have to do is to make sure you move it and actually put it on top of here until you see this particular dot around your table, then you release. So as you can see, we now have the two measures joined the other measure right here. So the thing is this, there is no need for we to keep this particular column one. We can actually delete or we hide it. So let me just go ahead and click on hide in report view. It is still here, but it's not going to be visible when we go back to this particular view. So can you now see it? We only have this particular couple of columns we have actually visible on our fact sales table right here. Okay, now that you have actually known how to do that, the next thing we have to do right now is to actually look at why shouldn't we use calculated column to create aggregations. So let's find out. Okay, the very first task we need to encounter right now is that we want to see how many or what is our revenue, our total revenue. That is what we want right now. So for we to create our total revenue, we can do it over here. The cost of goods can be done over here. The profit can be done over here, but there'll be problem along the line. Let's find out how that would look like. And later, after all, I'm going to show you why you should actually use measure to do it. So right away, we're going to be creating calculated column, which is not an ideal, but we need to do it for we to know the side effect of what we are doing so that you could actually stop it. So for you to do that right now, we are on this particular table. You can see column tools and click on new column. So quickly, what we need to do is to type in revenue. So with our revenue here, what we need is just for we to actually multiply the total quantity sold by the unit price. So if I type in here the fact table, just F will bring the fact table for me. Then you can scroll through to see the sales quantity. Then you multiply that by what? By the fact table here, and we're going to be looking for where we have the sales price. This is the unit price right here. So now we aren't using any function yet. That was because we're actually on the table view where we can see physical table, just like what happens in Excel when you want to multiply one column to another. So there is no need for you to use function right here. So if I go ahead and hit my enter key, what happens? I have this line by line, calculation for me. So over here now, you might be thinking like, why do we have the repetition of the unit price just like this here? That was because the quantity or the unit we sold is actually the same thing over and over again. You understand? It looks like it's a repetition. This is 699, this is 6990. So when we multiply this by this, we have this. For we to see difference, just go ahead and sort descending, and now you can now see when we multiply 9.99 to this particular number, we have this variation of numbers. So let's go back to it again. So click over here. The easiest way is for you to copy this and create a new column. So with this new column, I'm going to paste this and change this one to costs of goods sold. And the other thing I'm going to change right here is for me to change this particular one right here to unit cost instead. And I hit my enter key. This will give me my unit cost. So right now, everything is 100% correct. There is no any issue yet. But let us add couple of measures right in here before we start having issues. So if I go ahead and add on that one right now, this time around, I'm going to create for profit. So for profit now, what we need is just for we to say revenue. Here's our revenue. We subtract our costs of goods sold from it. And this will give us our total profit, which is something very simple that anybody can actually create. So where the problem will actually arise is when we actually want to actually create our percentage of profit margin. Line by line, it will be correct. But when we actually take it to visualize it, the problem will start, and that will definitely tell you that do not do aggregations with calculated column. So let's find out. So over here, I add new measure. Please do exactly what I'm doing for you to see the side effect from your own end is very, very important. So I'm going to do percentage, PCT margin. So for the percentage margin here, what I'm going to do is to actually bring my profit. So here is my profit. So we divide that by the revenue. So this will definitely give us our total profit. So we need to convert this into a percentage. So when we do this particular conversion now, so we're going to see what happens. So if we actually take, this is the profit here, this particular profit, we actually use a calculator to divide it by this particular revenue right here. It gives us 49.05%, which is actually true. Okay, now we have this. Let us try to see if everything we have done right here is an ideal. So let us quickly look at what happens when we actually create something like this. It adds to our file size because we have over 2.2 million rows of data right here, which is huge. So adding more columns to it is going to be some kind of out of point because we are adding more weight to this particular table. So don't do it. So over here, I would love to just go ahead and duplicate this one. So let me just name this one 1. And I'm going to come in here and take off everything that I have right here, as well this particular one. So remember, we just created a calculated column, and if you look at it right here, this is how it looks. So first of all, I'm going to bring my profit, my revenue, then cost of goods sold and profit margin. Everything here looks all right. But what happens when I try to bring in my percentage margin? So we have this particular huge number right here. And what we are saying is actually on summarization, right? So sum of percentage. So this cannot really happen. This is crazy. This is never a percentage. So to make sure it makes sense a little bit, what we might do is for we to actually click over this particular table, then go over here and look for that particular percentage of margin and click over here now. Then the sum function, we can go over to average and average it. It will make a little sense. So which still doesn't make any sense right here. So for we to be sure if this does make any sense, what can we do? We can actually verify if this is true. So for we to do that right now, we need to bring up what? Bring up our calculator from our PC. So here is our profit, right? So I'm going to do 487. So 487,457, then 516.91. Then we divide that. We divide it by what? By the total revenue. This is what we have just done. Now, total revenue here is going to be 8467. Then 938, then 313 point what? 0.52. Then let us look at what this is going to give to us. So here is it. It's giving us 57%. So approximately, this is what it's giving us right here. So when we approximate 6 to this one here, it will be, it will be 6. So that is 57.6. Can you see it right now? So what do we have on a real sense? It's giving us 54. So still, despite that we actually converted to an average, it does not still give us the right percentage that we want. So this particular one here has proven it wrong, that what we have is actually wrong. You understand? So line by line on every single brand is wrong, and over here is wrong. This is one of the reasons you shouldn't be using calculated column for anything that has to do with aggregation. I believe you must have learned something from here right now. So once we have known this, how do we actually correct what is going on right here? So to correct what is going on right here right now, let me show you what happens again. So if I go all the way back here and I some kind of click on my revenue and I say, okay, because we asked not to some kind of use calculated column for anything that has to do with aggregation, let me just go ahead and create a measure with this. Do you think it's going to work? Let's find out. So we already have our measure table. So make sure what you're clicking on is on the measure table. You can right click and create a new measure. By the time I paste this one in here, we already have error, right? So we have an error right here. So how do we solve this particular error? So, and what will happen when we hover over this particular part of the error? So let's see here. It says cannot find name, sales quantity, right? So what do we do to make sure this actually gives us what we want? So which means we have to follow the right way to do it. But before we do anything here to create the correct version of this particular calculation, let me show you something. So I'm going to cancel out, right? There is nothing here again. So we have this particular table here. So the fact table, inside the fact table, we have unit costs, we have unit price, and we have sales quantity, and we have the quantity, returned as well. Okay, why am I telling you this? Let us go to the product table right here. Over here on this particular product table, if I scroll to this particular end, we're going to see something similar to what we have seen. Like here we have the unit cost and the unit price. So the only thing we're not seeing here is the quantity returned. So they are some kind of similar, which means we can use either of the two tables to create what we want. So I'm going to first of all create my total revenue from the transactional table or the sales table holistically. Then I'll show you if, for example, you did not find here, if for example you did not find your unit costs and the unit price inside your sales table and it's actually found on the product table, how do you make that calculation? So let's do it. So I'm going to leave this one here. Let us duplicate. So I'm going to just put this one to 2. Okay. So once we have this one on 2, I can shift it up and just make it this way. So copy so that we can compare the two results once we are done creating. So right here, we have this, no problem. Okay. The very first thing we have to do is this. You understand that bringing our measure, our calculated column, DAX here wouldn't work for us. So, which you definitely know of. So it will not work. What do we do? Here I'm going to calculate total revenue, which is very simple. So for the total revenue right now, we have two functions that look similar. We have the sum function and we have the sum x function. So to do that right now, to calculate for our revenue, we type in here sum x. And what I want you to actually look at right now is this particular IntelliSense right here. So the sum x is looking for a table, which is where is the table we want to use is sitting. So the fact table is what contains our quantity. So with my comma right here, it's asking for expression. So what will this expression be? Expression must not be a text, but number. So our expression now will be sales quantity. So here we go. We have our sales quantity right here. So we multiply this particular sales quantity by unit price. So can you see? Unit price. Then once we do this, we bring this and we hit our enter key. This will definitely create for us our total revenue. So what is the difference between this particular one and the previous one we have created? I believe nothing when it comes to value, but something when it comes to reusing of either of the two. So we can reuse this one. The previous one we created using calculated column cannot be reused because it's not actually a measure, but just a column. All right, let's find out. Look at the number we have right here. As for revenue, 8.4. Then we're going to click over this table and just replace it. So we go for revenue. So now we're going to click over here. So we go into the DAX and bring total revenue in here. If you look at it, the only thing that changed right now is just the title. Everything looks exactly the same thing and the grand total looks exactly just like what we have here. To create total revenue from two tables, like the transactional table or the fact table and the product table, let's do it. So what you can do is to make sure you have right click here, you have this new measure, click done. So let's wait for it. So I'm going to type in here revenue 2, and what you need to do is still to use the sum x right here. So with the sum x right now, we are going to bring in the table. So from this particular table, what can we find here? For now, we are only going to actually assume that we only have the quantity sold right in here, which is the sales quantity, fact table, or we can type in sales Once we do that, we can bring in the sales quantity here, right? So we want to multiply this sales quantity by something sitting in a different table. So now this particular table we are talking about has a connection to this particular fact sales table, but we have to re-establish the connection, which is going to be using related. So related is a function that actually brings in column from a related table. So what are we looking for? We go to product table. So once we click on product, we have every single columns from the product table. We can scroll through to get what we want. So now we are looking for unit price. We find the unit price. We can close for our related, shift enter, and we can close for our, sum X. And if I hit my enter key right here, we should have everything that has to do with this. So let's see. So now we can just bring in this particular revenue too. Okay, if you look at it right now, there is no difference between this one and this one. Let us look at the first one's measure. So the first one here is this measure without related, and the second one is this particular measure with related function. So can you now see what it is? Very simple. We don't have to do something different more than this to create for our cost of goods sold. We can replicate this for cost of goods sold by doing copy, and we create a new measure. So if I paste it down over here, instead of total revenue to be cost of goods sold, and we are multiplying by unit price, this one now will be unit costs, and that will create our cost of goods sold for us. And still, what happens if we try to make a change to this one? The only thing that will change is just the title. Numbers, it will remain the same thing. Let's go ahead and try it. So total cost of goods sold here, nothing changes with the number. We still have the same exact thing, right? Now, the next thing is for we to get the total profit. So right click and create a new measure. So for total profit now, for you to easily bring in the measures you've created, if I start typing total, can you see what comes first? Those DAX measures that start with T and O. To make it easy, the square bracket will bring all the measures you've created and you can select from it. So for total profit, we actually take our revenue and we subtract from what? We subtract our cost of goods sold from it, and that will give us our total profit. So here we go. Now, before we actually drag in our total profit into here, the next thing we have to do is to actually create our percentage. Okay, let's go with a new measure. So now we're going to create percentage of our revenue. So it's going to be this. Profit margin. So, and what we're going to do here is to use a function called divide function. So with the divide function, the very first thing we have to do is to bring in our profit and say, okay, we want to divide that by our total revenue. So type in total revenue here. And if there is a division by 0, we want to actually handle it. So we put 0 right there. Yeah. Okay, now that is done. We have just done justification to it. Everything we have done right here is what we should have done. But the thing is this, for you to understand why you shouldn't do the opposite, that was why I showed you what I've shown you previously. Let's go ahead and format this into a percentage and now drag it in here to see what it is that we have. So here we have the sum of profit. We have to change it to profit. So total profit. Then this particular percentage here, we need to replace it with this particular one. So let's go ahead and compare everything we have here now. So can you see it? We have just exactly what our calculator did for us, which is 57.62%. and over here is 54.66%. If I bring up our calculator right now, can you see this particular value here? 57. They approximate this particular 6 to 5 to give you 6, and that is exactly what happened. So this is exactly what it is. You need to, sometimes I use calculator to verify my calculation, specifically when you have huge data. It will be very, hard for you to really understand if what you have done is 100% correct. So use calculator to verify it and see what it is. So with our verification, you can see what happens. Over here is actually 59.4% for this particular brand, and the average of the percentage we brought from calculated column gives us 57%, which is wrong. So do you now see, when it comes to creating calculations, what you should do? So over here now we have this, which is the correct one, and it is time for you to go back to here and click quickly back to this particular part here and delete off everything from here. So, but if we have to do that, that will be something manual. It's like one after the other. So I would have to delete this one, right click and locate where I have my delete, which is this very one right here, and I have to confirm this before it got removed for me. This is going to take me a long time, specifically if I have like 10 different columns to delete. So what is the easiest way to get it off? So go over to this particular model view here and click over the table you want to delete something from. Identify what you want to delete. You want to delete this one, hold your control key, this one, and this very one right here. The next thing you do is to hit the delete key on your keyboard and just confirm this, and everything will be deleted at a time. Do you understand now? So let's go back to here. Now this particular table has to be fixed. So when we fix it, we have nothing here but just this particular column brand. So we can remove it, and over here we can just maintain this. This is the correct value of our revenue, cost of goods sold, profit, and the profit margin, which I believe that is something you should have known by now. So I believe you must have learned something. If you are still watching, please hit the like button, subscribe if need be, share to your friends and family that might actually love to know how to do all of this. So if there is any question, please do not hesitate to actually ask, and that is exactly what you need to know.